What's up guys? Today I'm going to be building a computer, which I do often on my channel, but this one is pretty different actually. It's for a purpose that I've never built a computer for before. So I'm going to need to preface this quite a bit and give some explanation of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and all that. But long story short, I'm improving and updating my security and surveillance system here at home.
Excellent!
If you're looking for an air cooler that looks great, supports 230 watt TDP CPUs, and doesn't break the bank, check out the Enermax ETS T50 Axe. It's available in black or white and features addressable RGB lighting which can be controlled by your motherboard, support for all current mainstream Intel and AMD CPUs including socket AM4, and 5 direct contact heat pipes with an asymmetric design for better RAM compatibility. There's a patented air guide with a rotatable grill to direct your airflow too, so click the sponsor link in the description to learn more. So a little backstory to start us out. I have never talked about my security system here at home because I think that would make it insecure. That said, I've been planning to do an update to it for quite some time for various reasons. One, I do not want a cloud-based solution. I want my security system to be run here from my home, and I want me to be the administrator and the controller of it, rather than having a third party based in the cloud somewhere that might potentially have security issues of their own somewhere down the line. I just don't want to have that as a possibility at all. So I want to DIY it, and I also think I found a solution that is pretty budget conscious as well. I've had this plan in my mind for quite some time, for maybe just over a year now, because it's based on a video that DIY Perks made on their YouTube channel talking about a piece of surveillance software called ContaCam and using simple USB cameras along with that software in order to create a home surveillance system using older hardware. You can even run this on a really old laptop if you want. I'll post a link to the DIY Perks video in the description if you're interested in checking it out. But I do have the software up and running on this laptop, and I did some initial testing, and I discovered it's pretty cool, it's pretty flexible. It's made so whenever you just take a webcam and plug it in and it's running the software, it pops up, recognizes the webcam, and lets you set up some parameters for that webcam, such as whether it's recording when it senses motion, or whether it's recording all the time, changing the resolution and where it saves files to and everything. And then since it's security software, it's meant to automatically start up on whatever system it's started on, reach out and recognize those webcams. And the cool thing that I've discovered is that it's compatible with a really wide variety of different webcams. I actually have some here, such as a Logitech C910. I got another Logitech C310 because, you know, these cameras cost maybe in the $10 to $30 range. The C910 is a little bit more, but it's also compatible with IP cameras. So if you have an IP camera that might be a little bit better suited for using outdoors, for example, you can set up a little network for your cameras connected up to a central computer running the software, and then you can basically DIY your own home surveillance system. The other nice thing about the software is that it sets up a web interface that you can access from any computer that's connected to your network. So if you do want to remotely access your surveillance system, all you have to do is set up a VPN or other VPN software on any computer that's on your network, remotely access that, which can also be a much more secure solution than dealing with a cloud-based service, and then you can go ahead and pull up any of your recorded footage and make sure that no one's trying to break into your house or steal your stuff. And my original plan was to use a laptop as a central hub. There's various benefits to that. For one, they tend to be lower power, and they have a battery built into it which can act as a backup in case you have a power outage at your house or something like that. I've decided not to use this laptop for a couple reasons though. This is the G550J. This is actually the laptop that we used in the Highlander gaming on top of a mountain that we did with Linus Tech Tips and Tech Syndicate many years back. It's still a really good laptop. I use it for a lot of stuff, including teleprompter here sometimes. If Kyle comes over and he forgets his laptop, he uses this one. So I've decided I still want to keep this around and usable as a laptop, and that's why I've decided to build a system, which I'm going to be getting to in just a minute. As a proof of concept, I set up on this laptop and I was just testing various webcams and solutions to see how flexible it was actually going to be. For example, I have a USB extension cable right here, which is actually a powered extension. That's an active cable because it's USB 3.0 rated, and I think it's like a 25 footer or something like that. I was testing this without the active supplemental power, and I found that it still works with a USB 2.0 webcam. That's really nice. I was messing around with some various hubs and other small powered and non-powered solutions for that, because I don't know if you guys have a USB collection box somewhere in your home, but I have so many USB cables and other little things like this, so making use of them makes me feel like it was valid that I saved them and kept them here in storage for so long, right? That's another good way of making an excuse for doing this. But I did discover that even unpowered, you can get quite a few USB webcams running off of the same port on your laptop. Of course, this is going to vary based on the webcam itself, what resolution, if there's any extra features that might draw extra power or anything like that. But the real basic ones seem to only draw just the tiniest trickle of power. And then the other cool thing is that apart from integrated solutions like from a company like Logitech, which are probably going to be a little bit nicer, there are quite a few very inexpensive webcam solutions that you can find on Amazon and eBay. Stuff like this that have, for example, the infrared light that it projects so it can actually record when it's dark. And little cameras like this, even though they're limited to 720p resolution, I was able to find for about like $13 or $14. So that's really cool too. If you want to expand and add more cameras to your setup, it's not difficult to do that. The last thing I wanted to point out, and one of the really cool implementations from the DIY Perks video, is making use of laptop webcam modules. Most laptops, or a lot of laptops, have a little webcam integrated into the top. That has to be very small and very low profile, and you can find replacement little laptop webcams like these, and you could potentially integrate these in a way that's very discreet around your home or office or wherever you're setting up surveillance. The only downside to these is that you have to figure out using a multimeter which wire connects up to where, but then you can splice that into a standard USB cable and then just plug these in as you would any other USB webcam. I still need to test these out. I'm going to be doing a follow-up video once I get the system put together on actual implementation of it. But I wanted to give a more complete explanation of my plans here from the get-go, so if you guys have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise for me, leave those down in the comments section, and in the follow-up video I will check those out and see if there's anything that might help me out or answer your questions or otherwise. That said, I want the system to be low profile, small, relatively low power, and be able to tuck it away up in my computer room somewhere secret and safe. And for that purpose, I happen to have this Dr. Zaber Sentry 2.0 case, which is very low profile, and it's called the Sentry 2.0. I'm going to use it for surveillance. Sentry, it just seems absolutely appropriate for that. So the next step is to figure out what other parts I'm going to be using. So here are the parts for our surveillance PC, and I'm trying to stick with the theme of using parts I already have, repurposing older parts that aren't currently in use. So to that end, of course, we got the Sentry 2.0 from Dr. Zaber. They originally sent me two of these. There's a black version and a gray version. This is the gray version. I did a giveaway with the original version, so that's why I don't have that anymore. So I think it'll be really nice and stay low profile and fit where I want to put it, but it's actually going to be a little bit larger than what I need because I'm not going to be using a discrete graphics card, which this does have space for. I might consider adding some storage down there, but for now, we're just going to get the basic system up and running. For our power supply, I've got the EVGA Supernova 550 GM. This is a new SFX small form factor power supply, 80 plus gold rated, so good on efficiency for a system that's going to be on 24/7. And yes, this was the power supply I used in the Pumpkin PC build, so now it needs a new home. Speaking of the Pumpkin PC builds, I also used this motherboard in there, the B450i Aorus Pro Wi-Fi. I was going to use a B350 motherboard that I had on hand, but I actually damaged that one accidentally, so I'm going to use this one instead. I think a nice bonus here is that it has Wi-Fi integrated, so even though I'm probably going to be plugging this in directly for system setup and everything, it is nice to have Wi-Fi integrated on a mini ITX motherboard because there's not always a lot of space to add that otherwise. For memory, I don't need a whole lot, so I'm going with this Ripjaws kit. It's actually Ripjaws 4. This was originally a 16 gig kit, 4x4 gigs. I don't know where two of the sticks went, so I'm reusing the two that are still left around. So it's going to be 8 gigs total. It's DDR4 2666. That's a little bit on the slow side for a Ryzen build, but we're not gaming on this or anything, so the memory speed actually has very little impact. So this will get the job done with 8 gigs and a kit that I wasn't using otherwise. For storage, I'm going with the little M.2 drive. This is actually a Plextor M6E, which is a PCI Express drive, but it is not NVMe. So it still has better speeds when it comes to read and writes than a standard SATA drive. It's also going to use less power than a standard SATA drive, but it's also a drive that I hadn't been using because I have faster NVMe drives. It's a 256 gig capacity, so plenty of space on there. This is going to work just fine to get us off and running and get an operating system installed, and then I have not yet decided whether I want to add more storage in the form of a larger SSD or mechanical drive to copy the footage to locally here on this system, or whether I'm just going to save it onto my NAS, but I'm going to figure that out in the future. Finally, since this is an AMD Ryzen based system, hopefully that was evident since it's a B450 motherboard, I need a Ryzen processor. I want an APU that has graphics integrated because I don't want to add a discrete graphics card. There's several different versions of this available, and I was going to try to use my 2400G, but I can't find my 2400G. All I can find is my 2200G. Part of the reason I was hoping to use a 2400G is because it's a quad core with SMT, so it's got 8 threads, and I did notice when I was testing with the laptop that if there's a lot of cameras active at the same time, that the system can get a little bogged down. So for that reason, I want a little bit more CPU horsepower, so I'm not going to use the 2200G. So I have no choice but to use the much newer and a bit nicer Ryzen 3400G. This is still using Zen Plus, so it's still a 12 nanometer architecture-based CPU. It's not 7 nanometer or anything like that. It is a step up though. It is overkill, probably the most overkill part in this setup. And since AMD sent this over a couple months ago anyway, I thought I would again put it to good use. With that said though, these are the parts I'm using today, and it is time to get this system put together. So we got our 3400G out of the box. Another one of the nice things about this being the upgraded version is that it comes with a better cooler, at least a bigger cooler. This is the Wraith Spire, but the newer version of the Wraith Spire that they shipped with the 3000 series of processors does not have the copper slug down at the bottom, and to account for that, the fan actually spins at a higher RPM, and it's noticeable. I've noticed it. I've read several other articles about it that say, yeah, it runs louder, and it's especially noticeable if it's a system you're trying to build that's going to be quiet. Fortunately, I have existing Wraith Spires from the previous generations that do have the copper slug and the lower RPM fan, so I'm just going to use that instead of that. Wait, hold on, the Wraith Spire is really tall. Look at me thinking I'm all smart for swapping that out and then realizing, oh yeah, we're going for a really small form factor build here, not enough vertical height clearance for this, so we are reverting back to a Wraith Stealth. I'm sure this will do the job just fine. Is that gonna block the fucking memory? Are you kidding me? I don't recall having this much difficulty with a stock heatsink fan before. What the hell is going on here? Hey, it's one of those builds where I'm like, I probably have all the parts for this. Let's throw it together. It shouldn't take too long. So first I wanted to use the Wraith Spire because that's a good cooler, and it's also very tall, hence the name Spire. Too tall for this case. Then switch to the Wraith Stealth. Wraith Stealth is also too tall for this case, unfortunately. So I have to figure out a different cooling solution. You can fit an all-in-one 120mm liquid cooler in here. I don't want to do that just because introducing an all-in-one loop to a system that's going to be on 24/7 and I want to be reliable isn't my cup of tea. So we're going with this one right over here. This is a box that just recently arrived from Noctua that has a bunch of really nice coolers in it, and I wasn't planning on using the cooler that we're going to use for this build, but it seems to be my only option right now, so here goes. They had black packaging, Noctua, really? That's intentional. That's absolutely intentional. So this is the Noctua Chromax Black set of air coolers. Basically, they took all their air coolers, covered this at Computex last year, and they've made them all in black. They've done black versions of their really high-end fans. I think to celebrate the fact that they're going blacked out, they've put black packing paper in this box too, which I just think is kind of funny. There's what I'm looking for. That's the NHL9i, an already very good Noctua low-profile cooler with a very nice quiet fan that does a really good job, especially considering its size. I don't need to use the all-black one in this build because it's not going to be visible, but it's the only one I got, so that's what I'm going to go with. They also included anti-vibration pads. And they've included little corner tabs, since these are all Chromax ones, so if you do want to add your own colors, you can, and it looks like they've included black, green, red, yellow, and white. So that's cool. And then we also have the Noctua NHU12S. This is the most recent cooler, 120 millimeter cooler that performs pretty much right on par with the NHD15, which uses 140 millimeter fans. So you guys will be seeing some more coverage or integration into builds or whatnot with these coolers in the future. For today, we can proceed now that we have the NH-L9i. So funny story, as the struggle continues to find a cooler for me to use in this build, which I thought was going to be a simple solution and is getting more and more complicated all the time. The Noctua L9i only ships with an Intel configuration. It's set up for LGA 1150X sockets, which is convenient if you're building an Intel rig. If you're not, they have an AM4 upgrade kit, which I should be well aware of because this is actually the cooler, not the black version, but I used the non-black version of this cooler in Riptide, and I had to use the AM4 upgrade kit for that, but you know, my memory is great and everything. Speaking of my memory not being that great, I have a CryoRig C7, and that's the same cooler that I used in this, and I did a test between air cooling with the C7 and water cooling with, I believe, a Corsair H60 120 millimeter all-in-one. Ended up giving that system away for the 1,000,000 subscriber thank you video that I did earlier this year. But I gave it away with the liquid cooler installed, which means I still have the air cooler. So rather than trying to do a last minute AM4 bracket for this guy, which honestly I want to keep in use for something else that's prettier and that will be more visible in, I'm going to go with that original CryoRig C7. Still has the thermal paste on it from when I did the builds in this the last time. So I think finally now we have an air cooler. We can finish off this build. My goodness. Okay.
It's been almost an hour.
I know, that was ridiculous. Removed the other cooler, prepped our CryoRig C7, which fortunately is already set up with the AM4 mounts. And when you get that AM4 mounting kit with the C7, or when you get the C7, it comes with a dual plate here that works for Intel or AMD. I went and modded this when I did that last build to make sure it would fit properly. Which isn't going to affect us, fortunately, because we're not worried about the Intel stuff here. But you do need to remove the back plate that comes with the motherboard and replace it with this. I feel like we've made massive progress since we've managed to get an air cooler installed, so that's cool. Here's what I'm going to do. For this entire other side here where you could potentially put a graphics card, but we're not, I want to make use of some of the space, and of course USB connections are going to be very important for this computer because I want to be able to plug in as many little cameras as possible. I have this, which is a USB 3.0 extension with a bracket that you can put on the back. We're actually going to be using the USB 3.0 that ships with the case to put our front panel brackets up there, but there's also a USB 2.0 port in there. So I fished out one of my older USB 2.0 front panel to bracket adapter things. I'm going to see if I can swap that bracket out. I might need to re-drill some holes, then give us a couple more USB 2.0 ports on the back of the case for connecting up cameras. Alright guys, at this point the build is put together, more or less, and this is one of those builds that I thought was going to be bing bang boom, get it done quick. Ran into a few hiccups, mainly with that heatsink fan for the CPU, but fortunately got past that. Did a minor mod with the rear connection for a couple more USB 2.0 ports. I also tested the front USB ports up here, at least the plug action, and that seems to be working as well. So without further ado, here's a quick power on test. Something's blocking the fan. Okay, I fixed it. I'm guessing that little rattle was caused by some flex on the fan housing caused after it was mounted securely to the motherboard through the back plate, but I just sort of wiggled it around a bit and it's okay now, so that's good. And that is also pretty much going to wrap it up for this video, guys. I will post links to these parts down in the video description, but please bear in mind, this isn't me trying to tell you guys, here is what you should put together for a home surveillance PC if you're interested in doing something like that. This was me using parts I already had to build something that will accomplish a task that I need to accomplish. It's also nice that there is a fair amount of expansion space up here in the top, so once I get the system up and running with Windows loaded and try testing out the software a little bit more and see what the performance is like, I could also potentially throw in, maybe 2 or 3 SSDs up there. Even a spinning mechanical hard drive might be something that I consider for mass storage long term. But that's all for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and consider stopping by my merch store at pulsehardware.net. I've got shirts like this one as well as a bunch of other high quality stuff. A great way to help support my channel and get yourself some nice stuff this holiday season. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.